Hello, my name is Stephen. I'm going to talk to you today about the Riverside County Commercially Sexually Exploited Children, or CSEC, steering committee that I've chosen for this project. So the committee is basically discussing the concerns regarding child human trafficking. The members of the committee range from about 25 members that have all developed protocol and agreements that they choose to follow through with. So the members include DPSS, or Children's Services, managers, social workers, and it's kind of open to any kind of collaboration between employees within DPSS. The other main agencies involved are the Riverside County Probation Department, Office of Education. The others are community partners that are nonprofits that work with our CSEC youth. Those include a place called Operation Safe House, which is like a shelter for youth where they can go if they need somewhere to stay. Other partners include our district attorney's office. We also have members that are participating from the public defender's office, attorneys that work with juvenile cases, local sheriff, Riverside County Sheriff Department, other local police departments within Riverside County, and behavioral health is a big piece of that. The clinicians and therapists there are part of the committee. Also, our CASAs, our child advocates, and several other agencies that work with child abuse, human trafficking victims. They've all come together, and kind of the reason that they've come together is there are state mandates that have been put in place to help service human trafficking victims, since they don't always get looked at as victims, and they sometimes get looked at as criminals, but they're children and they have been trafficked. So the collaborative has been designed to really bring all these multiple agencies and disciplines together to focus on the issues of child trafficking. So the forces that led up coming together of this committee, again, are state mandates. There are a lot of different Senate bills that have been put into place that the counties have elected to follow up with. It is a voluntary program for the different the different counties in California. So Riverside County has opted to participate in the program. With the program comes funding and different things that they must keep track of in order to receive the funding and implement the CSEC program. So one of the bills that I found was Senate Bill 855, and it basically allows that child welfare agencies include CSEC children as dependents and service them appropriately. They're given different funds and expenditures to help implement the program and identify services, prevention strategies, interventions, and training related to human trafficking for the children that we serve. So that is basically one of the main bills that have come through government and have been implemented. So that's kind of how this collaboration has come together. They started with the program identifying who are required to participate when you agree to become a CSEC county, and I believe the top 4 or 5 agencies have to be DPSS, probation, the Department of Behavioral Health, and Public Health. So all of those agencies have come together and agreed that they want to implement the CSEC program. So that's kind of how the collaborative started. And then later on, I'll talk a little bit about how others were invited through community partners that are important to have in the collaborative. The purpose of the collaborative, and it's kind of outlined in the interagency protocol that I will attach a link to so you can kind of review. It's really long, but it has a lot of information about the operation of this collaborative. So they kind of focus on, again, the human trafficking. A description is kind of given about what a human traffic victim is, but primarily the county has developed the purpose for this program is utilizing a multidisciplinary approach for case management services, service planning, and provisions that are in regard to trauma informed and victim centered, rather than kind of treating these youth as criminals. It's important that they are acknowledged to be victims and victims of child abuse and neglect, and that they are not criminals when it comes to human trafficking. And so the purpose is to ensure that these youth are getting the services that they need and that are we're paying special attention to it and making sure that they're tracking and documenting the prevalence of human trafficking in our county. So the committee focuses on all of these things within 4 different subcommittees, and those subcommittees include training and prevention. So training social workers and coming up with prevention strategies for human trafficking in our county, identification and assessments of human trafficking. So starting from when a referral is received, identifying that a youth might be at risk of human trafficking, placement and team decision making. So what kind of services and placements are available, and how do we work with families when dealing with human trafficking? And then the last one is service delivery and case management. So those are the 4 subcommittees that are a part of this larger steering committee and collaborative. So the collaborative, I believe, has some experience in speaking with the agency lead, which is one of the managers from the Children's Services Division. Their experience in writing grants is they consistently kind of have to write. Well, they get funding from the state and the federal government, but sometimes they do apply for grants that will help increase funding for services and resources. So I believe they've written grants to get specific trainings as far as trainings for social workers, as well as other community agencies that are able to attend these trainings. Other than that, I don't think they do too much grant writing. Budgeting, they are allotted to budget. I don't know what that specific number is like, but each county that has participated in the CSEC program is allotted federal and state funding for the program. And the experience with the program, I believe it kind of all started in around 2013 when the Senate bill was initiated. The program was had to be developed in, and that's where this committee, this collaborative has started. So in discussing some of the challenges, the first in the first stage, the vision stage, I think the big part was identifying who the leaders of the collaborative are and what their roles are going to be. How do we get everyone to the table? How do we develop a vision? What's our goal setting process? What are the big things that we want to focus on? So in talking to the agency lead, she has been with the program for the last about 5 years since its birth. So she's kind of been tasked along with the 4 other departments. The 4 of them kind of started the steering committee, and their biggest struggle was to who do we bring to the table? How do we get them to the table? And how do we get everyone to have the same vision as far as the victims of human trafficking and how we service that population? For stage 2, the conflict was something that we discussed in detail and has definitely come a long way. But the biggest conflict was for other agencies, primarily law enforcement, probation, seeing the human trafficking victims, the children, as criminals and not as victims. It was a different mindset, a shift in thinking for how these agencies view child and human trafficking. So changing their perspectives was a big issue. It was a conflict because law enforcement officers are trained to kind of see human trafficking as a crime, whereas in child welfare, we see them as victims and needing services and assistance from the department. Other conflicts or issues that have come up, struggles in the stage 2, was roles, kind of what role does everyone play, what are the responsibilities of each member, what decisions need to be made, and what's that process like. So within this agency, within the collaborative, they've developed an interagency protocol, and that is what I will be posting the link to, but it's a like almost 80-page document that really outlines who the participants are, what their roles are, and it also has signature pages for each agency lead. So their department must sign off on that. If there's concerns or there's something that's incorrect in there, they review it beforehand. It gets reviewed and revised about every year to year and a half to make sure that it's up to date and that every agency has their input as to the protocol for this collaborative and the decision-making process. In stage 3, as far as implementation, we know that the county has elected to participate in the CSEC program. So it's kind of their responsibility to get things rolling, to get the implementation going. So from what I understand, the process was identifying, the committee members, who's going to participate, and what does this committee look like? How do we implement it? How do we make it successful? And so a lot of that was with communication and trust and relationship building with the community partners and agencies, faith-based organizations, county agencies that don't always collaborate together. And so once they were able to get all the members identified, the goals set, the purpose of the collaborative, they're able to implement. And now the collaborative meets, the main steering committee collaborative meets quarterly. So every 3 months there is a meeting. We just had one this month in March. And it's a meeting where everybody comes together and really collaborates on progress, on barriers, and what action steps they can take to help each other to better service our human trafficking victims. And so in this steering committee, we talk about joint agreements, what can be done, how can we help, collaborating, linking together people from different disciplines. And a lot of that comes from reporting out from the different subcommittees that I mentioned earlier. The 4 subcommittees have their own meetings, which meet monthly or bi-monthly and work on their issues, like placement talks in regards to foster care placements for these youth. Other committees talk about training and prevention. So they bring all of their subcommittee information to the main steering committee to report up. And then we talk about evaluation, how things are going, what needs to be done, and they also talk about data and what the numbers look like, what our progress looks like, and what the concerns are. One of the evaluation pieces are the number. We keep track of the number of human trafficking or CSEC identified youth that come into the system, or even just starting with the referral or investigation. So we talk about what those numbers look like. The committee puts together something like this, and I know it'll be backwards, but it is a outline of the referrals that have come in. So each child represents about 10 referrals that come into the hotline. So they kind of put together that to be able to see a visual of what our committee, what our collaborative is facing, and kind of how they're servicing them. So a lot of evaluation comes from the steering committee and the data collection and analysis. And as far as stage 4, building for the future, I think the collaborative has been very successful. There are a lot of members that are committed to this issue of human trafficking, and they attend the meeting consistently. I think that's a big piece for building the future, is having these members come consistently and give their input and give their expertise on working with human trafficking victims. For building the future, I think just really remaining consistent. There hasn't been any recent bumps in the road. The program has been kind of reauthorized by the state after data collection and reevaluation. The program is still good to go. I believe they get a budget And so as that budget comes in, it has been successful in helping with the subcommittees and their outcomes in helping the youth. Um, Institutionalizing the collaboration, a lot of the collaboration has within their subcommittees has kind of gone to every other department and done training and awareness so that way not just the committee members are the ones that are working on this, that the employees within that umbrella of each agency are aware of the issues and are in agreement with collaborating to help the youth that we come in contact with that have been victims of human trafficking. In regards to ethical dilemmas, I think I kind of spoke a little bit on that earlier. The big piece was for other agencies not seeing or having the same vision of what a human trafficking victim is, as far as child welfare sees them as victims and law enforcement would see them as criminals. So the different treatment and the different visions or ideas of human trafficking that each agency has was a big challenge and a dilemma for changing that perspective to see that although it's criminal behavior, these children do not choose to become human trafficking victims, that they don't, that's not a goal that they do, that's not something that they just decide overnight, that instead they are brought into the life of human trafficking and kind of get stuck there without any help or resources available to them. So I think that was a big dilemma and challenge. Other challenges in the committee, and it'll be interesting to see how moving forward the challenge continues to function, because at this last meeting in March, we were told that their agency leads for DPSS, so the primary lead agency manager that oversees the program, is actually moving assignments. So there will be new management in charge of this. And so the challenge would be to keep the meeting and the collaborative consistent, not dropping the ball, not letting things fall through the cracks with the changes within the collaborative. And I think this happens often. People move on to different projects, different careers, so they might have that change in leadership, but it'll really speak to the committee's commitment on how things proceed from here. In regards to theory, a lot of, I think, collaboratives that we deal with in child welfare apply systems theory, where we're looking at how each system, child welfare, probation, law enforcement, public health, behavioral health, how these different systems interact and overlap with each other in regards to, for this collaborative, we're talking about human trafficking. So how each agency navigates the human trafficking dilemmas that we have, and how these systems overlap in servicing those victims. So a lot of overlapping happens when, we might have a youth that has some behavioral issues and also medical needs. So behavioral health, public health, child welfare, all servicing this child. And so each system is looking at how they overlap and communicate and work with each other to better service these youth. Lastly, opportunity for change. One of the big changes that maybe I have sitting in the meeting and thinking about how things are going, the committee's made a lot of progress and they're doing great things. The only problem that I think we have is when these youth come into care, in foster care, we don't have a lot of business alliances or contracting services out that can provide stability for these youth. A lot of times we have foster care placements or foster homes that are not trained or just cannot deal with the extreme behaviors that these youth are having. A lot of it is the running away, involvement with provocative things on social media, coming and going from the home when they'd like, and still being involved in human trafficking life. So a big change that I would think of is where our business alliances are, the funding that we get, how can we contract for services that are going to help us increase our placements for foster youth rather than sending them somewhere farther away in Riverside County. Having youth sent from Riverside all the way up north or even out of state because we don't have um, an ample amount of services for them. So the business alliances that we do have are great, but I think reaching out to more and getting and spreading the word about the need for these youth and their placement stability in order for them to be successful in other areas of their life, like education, socially, how they interact with others. So if there was something I could change, it would be just kind of increasing the amount of focus that we have on um, the placement services and placement availability we have for foster youth in foster care. So overall, I believe that the collaborative has been very successful. They have a lot of goals that they're working on, and it's going to be this collaborative is going to be around for a long time because of the severity and the issue with human trafficking. It's difficult to fight that fight overnight and make it go away. So this collaborative is going to always be moving, and they might meet a goal and they're going to move on to other goals. So it's going to be continuously assessing the needs of the collaborative and of the youth that they serve. And so it was really nice to sit in and see the collaborative work of all of these agencies really coming together for an issue that they're all passionate about, because sometimes different agencies have different perspectives and it can get complicated. Agendas can be different. And in this meeting, it was really refreshing that they all had the same common goal to do good for these youth. And that they're going to continue to do so. So that's it. Thanks.